Historic and tragic day in our country. An assassination attempt on former President Donald Trump at a campaign rally in Pennsylvania. We're continuing to monitor the ABC News special report, and if there are any developments during this newscast, we will bring them to you right away. You're about to watch the moment as the chaos unfolded as gunshots erupted.
Take a look at what happened.
Secret Service swarmed Trump within seconds of those first few shots. He emerged from the scrum bloodied and gave a fist pump to his supporters as he was whisked away. The shooter, a man, is dead, along with a spectator, and in the last 30 minutes, we've learned 2 other people who were injured at that rally are at a Pennsylvania hospital in critical condition. The former president, Donald Trump's presidential campaign, confirms he will be attending the GOP convention in Milwaukee next week. National correspondent Kayla Gaskin joins us from Capitol Hill with what we know about the developing situation.
Donald Trump releasing a statement in the hours after the attack saying he was shot by a bullet that pierced his upper ear. He also thanked the Secret Service for their action and gave condolences to the rally attendee who died. Trump's campaign confirmed the former president is fine and that he was checked out at a local medical facility. A political rally turned into a crime scene.
This is a big crowd. This is a big, beautiful crowd.
As the former president spoke to his supporters in Butler, Pennsylvania Saturday, gunshots ripped through the air. Donald Trump seen reaching for his ear before dropping to the ground. Secret Service immediately rushing the stage to surround him. Screams heard in the crowd. Go. After a few tense moments, the former president on his feet, blood spattered across his cheek and ear. Trump giving a fist bump as Secret Service whisked him away to the hospital. The Associated Press reporting the shooter is dead, along with 1 rally attendee. President Biden spoke to Trump following the shooting and earlier condemned the violence.
There's no place in America for this kind of violence. It's sick. It's sick.
Republican House Majority Leader Steve Scalise was shot in 2017 by a left-wing activist. On Saturday, Scalise writing, "For weeks, Democrat leaders have been fueling ludicrous hysteria that Donald Trump winning re-election would be the end of democracy in America. Clearly, we've seen far-left lunatics act on violent rhetoric in the past. This incendiary rhetoric must stop." We spoke with a Trump supporter who was 6 rows from the stage.
Just a sad day for America. Just a really sad day for America. The vibe was, it was open with prayer. People were united. This is America. This is freedom, regardless of your politics.
This rally was supposed to be a celebratory moment for Trump heading into the GOP convention in Milwaukee that starts Monday. The convention will no doubt have a very different feel with tighter security now on tap in the wake of Saturday's shooting. In Washington, I'm Kayla Gaskins.
An Associated Press source says an AR-15 style rifle was recovered at the scene. We learned a short time ago that ABC News is reporting the shooter was a man. We have also learned that President Biden is heading back to the White House tonight. The suspect was shot dead by Secret Service. 1 rally goer was killed and another was seriously hurt. Officials are still working to confirm the identity of the suspect. We've learned the FBI has assumed the role of the lead federal law enforcement agency in this investigation. A Trump supporter who was standing close to the former president when he was shot relives the moment he knew Trump wasn't seriously hurt.
I saw him stand. I saw him stick his fist in the air and to let us know that he was okay. And, that was an inspiring moment to see that.
Trump's upper right ear was grazed by a bullet. Again, 1 supporter behind him was killed. 2 other people were injured. In a statement, True Truth Social, Trump says they're in his thoughts. An attendee of the Trump rally is sharing photos of the shooting's aftermath. We want to warn you, the pictures you're about to see are graphic. In it, we can see the bleachers that were behind Donald Trump, completely empty and covered in blood from one of the victims. The attendee who died was reportedly shot in the head. Another rally goer says he rushed in to try to save the victim. Here he is after the chaos died down, still covered in blood.
All we know was shots were fired, and then I jumped over the barrier and put my hand on the guy's head that was profusely bleeding.
Were you in the vicinity of where Trump was?
I was on the side. I was with a special guest.
Are you okay?
I'm Rico Elmore, but I just military reactions.
Prayers and support are pouring in for the former president following the horror in Pennsylvania. South Carolina Governor Henry McMaster sharing on X, quote, "The risks and forces President Trump is willing to face to serve his country are unbounded. He is the face of America's strength today. Peggy and I join millions of others praying for his safety and security and that of his family and our country." Senator Tim Scott sharing, quote, "Praying for President Trump and everyone at the rally in Pennsylvania. May God watch over them." Senator Lindsey Graham also taking to X, saying, quote, "Thank God President Trump seems to be okay. Just another reminder of the times in which we live." He went on to encourage prayers for the people involved. And former South Carolina Governor and UN Ambassador Nikki Haley is offering her support to the one-time GOP rival in the 2024 election cycle. Haley said, quote, "This should horrify every freedom-loving American. Violence against presidential candidates must never be normalized." Earlier this week, Haley released all her convention delegates and urged them to support Donald Trump. South Carolina Attorney General Alan Wilson also supporting Mr. Trump on social media. He posted saying, quote, "President Trump is in our thoughts and prayers. This cowardly act today is a very dark moment. We are at a crossroads in America and must do better." And in the Low Country, South Carolina Representative Nancy Mace spoke with our sister station, Sinclair's sister station in Charleston, about the attempt on the former president.
Well, I think the entire country and probably the entire world was shocked at what they saw, the images that they saw, blood across Trump's face and his side of his head. I'm praying for the family tonight of the person who was killed at the rally. I'm praying that the other audience member that was injured survives their injuries tonight. And I pray that the shooter that tried to shoot Donald Trump rests in hell.
Former President Barack Obama is condemning the shooting. In a statement on Twitter, he says, "We should all be relieved that former President Trump wasn't seriously hurt." He's wishing Trump a speedy recovery and is calling for a return to, quote, "civility and respect in politics." And former President George W. Bush chiming in on the shooting. In a statement, he says he and his wife are grateful President Trump is safe. Bush goes on to call the shooting a cowardly attack, and he commended the Secret Service for their quick response.
We're following developing news after chaos erupted last night at a campaign rally in Butler, Pennsylvania. An assassination attempt against former President Donald Trump. What we know right now is that in addition to former President Trump, 3 people at the rally were injured. One of them died and 2 others are at a Pennsylvania hospital in critical condition. This morning, we're learning more details about yesterday's shooting. The FBI has identified the shooter as 20-year-old Thomas Matthew Crooks of Bethel Park, Pennsylvania. Secret Service snipers killing Crooks after he fired multiple shots at the former president. At this time, FBI and other federal agents are still working to find the motive behind the incident. They say that several witnesses still need to be interviewed, and they're calling the situation dynamic. Here's ABC's Perry Russum now with more on yesterday's horrific scene.
This morning, the FBI is naming the suspected shooter as Thomas Matthew Crooks, 20 years old, from Bethel Park, Pennsylvania, south of Pittsburgh. The FBI saying this remains an active and ongoing investigation. Overnight, former President Trump arriving in New Jersey, walking down the stairs of his plane, hours after what the FBI is calling an assassination attempt at his campaign rally in Pennsylvania.
Look what happened.
New video shows the Secret Service reacting to the shooting on top of that white roof. A law enforcement source tells ABC News the shooter is believed to be a lone wolf.
We do not currently have an identified motive, although our investigators are working tirelessly to attempt to identify what that motive was.
Law enforcement sources tell ABC News the shooter fired as many as 8 rounds using an AR-style rifle from a rooftop. This video from above shows what's believed to be the suspected gunman, according to a law enforcement official briefed on the investigation. That rooftop is about 400 feet from the stage. The shooting happening minutes into a rally in Butler County, Pennsylvania, north of Pittsburgh. Trump releasing a statement that reads in part, "It is incredible that such an act can take place in our country. I was shot with a bullet that pierced the upper part of my right ear. I knew immediately that something was wrong and that I heard a whizzing sound, shots, and immediately felt the bullet ripping through the skin."
There's no place in America for this kind of violence. It's sick. It's sick. It's one of the reasons why we have to unite this country.
One spectator was killed, 2 others injured. Pennsylvania State Police say the shots fired were scattered, with the injured and dead spread throughout the crowd. Perry Russum, ABC News, Milwaukee.
The former school district where Thomas Crooks attended has released a statement saying in part, quote, "Bethel Park School District can confirm that the alleged shooter in the July 13th, 2024 assassination attempt on former President Donald J. Trump is a graduate of Bethel Park High School. Thomas Matthew Crooks graduated from Bethel Park High with the class of 2022. We're limited in what we can publicly disclose. Moving forward, we will work closely with law enforcement investigators and share information as appropriate with respect to school district policies, the active investigation, and law enforcement protocols. A new statement also out this morning from former President Donald Trump calling for Americans to, quote, stand united. On Truth Social, he says it was, quote, God alone who prevented the unthinkable from happening. Adding, in this moment, it's more important than ever that we stand united and show our true character as Americans, remaining strong and determined and not allowing evil to win. The White House says President Biden has spoken with Donald Trump, though no further details were provided on that call. Biden will convene a briefing with Homeland Security and law enforcement officials at the White House today. On social media, Homeland Security Secretary Alejandro Mayorkas says the department is taking every possible measure to ensure security for both Biden and Trump's campaign. He calls it one of the department's, quote, most vital priorities. President Biden also taking to X just hours before former President Trump was shot. He was addressing gun violence. The tweet reading, quote, I want to ban assault weapons and require universal background checks. Trump promised the NRA that he'd do nothing about guns, and he means it, end quote. Little is known about the suspect's weapon at this time. However, a source tells the Associated Press the shooter had an AR-style rifle. And right here in the Palmetto State, prayers and support have been pouring in for the former president following the horror in Pennsylvania. South Carolina Governor Henry McMaster sharing on X, writing, quote, the risks and forces President Trump is willing to face to serve his country are unbounded. He's the face of America's strength today. Peggy and I join millions of others praying for his safety and security and that his family and our country. Senator Tim Scott sharing, quote, praying for President Trump and everyone at the rally in Pennsylvania. May God watch over them. Senator Lindsey Graham also taking to X to share, quote, thank God President Trump seems to be okay. Just another reminder of the times in which we live. He went on to encourage prayers for the people involved. Former South Carolina Governor and UN Ambassador Nikki Haley also offering her support to her once GOP rival in the 2024 election cycle. Haley saying, quote, this should horrify every freedom-loving American. Violence against presidential candidates must never be normalized. Earlier this week, Haley released all her convention delegates and urged them to support Donald Trump. South Carolina Attorney General Alan Wilson also supporting Trump on social media, saying, quote, President Trump is in our thoughts and prayers. This cowardly action today is a very dark moment. We're at a crossroads in America and must do better. In the Low Country, South Carolina Representative Nancy Mace speaking with our Sinclair sister station in Charleston about that assassination attempt on former President Trump.
Well, I think the entire country and probably the entire world was shocked with what they saw, the images that they saw, blood across Trump's face and his side of his head. I'm praying for the family tonight of the person who was killed at the rally. I'm praying that the other audience member that was injured survives their injuries tonight. And I pray that the shooter that tried to shoot Donald Trump rests in hell.
This isn't some third world banana republic. This is the United States of America. We can be better. We are better than that. And we should act like it.
Strong words tonight from Congressman Russell Fry. I spoke with Fry just a few hours ago about the assassination attempt on former President Donald Trump. The FBI leading the investigation after Trump was shot at in the ear during a campaign event in western Pennsylvania. The shooting putting the country on edge as Republicans gear up for this week's national convention in Wisconsin, where Donald Trump will be officially named the Republican Party's 2024 presidential nominee. We start, though, with ABC's Jay O'Brien in Milwaukee.
Former President Donald Trump seen leaving his home in Bedminster, New Jersey Sunday afternoon ahead of traveling to Milwaukee for the Republican National Convention. This just a day after what the FBI says was an attempted assassination at a rally in Pennsylvania.
Take a look at what happened.
Gunfire erupting just minutes into his speech. The former president grabbing his right ear, ducking behind the podium. Secret Service agents then rushing to shield him, then lifting him to his feet and escorting him to a vehicle as he pumped his fist in the air. Trump revealing he was shot with a bullet that pierced the upper part of my ear. Today, Trump posting on social media, calling for Americans to stand united. 2 people were critically injured and 1 person in the crowd was killed. Identified as Corey Coppertor, his family posting tributes to him online. The governor of Pennsylvania speaking about him today.
Corey was a girl dad.
Corey was a firefighter. Corey dove on his family to protect them last night.
The Secret Service saying they neutralized the suspected gunman, who the FBI has now identified as 20-year-old Thomas Matthew Crooks. Investigators confirming to ABC News they believe this screenshot, now part of their ongoing investigation, shows the suspect receiving his high school diploma. The AR-15 style rifle recovered at the scene was legally purchased by the suspect's father, according to multiple law enforcement sources. This image shows the roof where investigators say the shots were fired in proximity to the former president. Preliminary investigations say this area was looked at as part of security sweeps, law enforcement sources tell ABC News. Later, there were reports of suspicious activity. Authorities believe the suspect somehow got onto the roof and was able to fire his weapon before Secret Service snipers located him. Hours after the shooting, President Biden speaking briefly with former President Trump. The president briefed on the investigation Sunday before addressing the nation.
There's no place in America for this kind of violence, or any violence for that matter. An assassination attempt is contrary to everything we stand for as a nation, everything.
With the Republican National Convention set to kick off here in Milwaukee on Monday, President Biden says he's directed the Secret Service to review all security protocols here, but the Secret Service says there are currently no credible threats. Jay O'Brien, ABC News, Milwaukee.
Another witness has come forward claiming he alerted law enforcement before the Donald Trump assassination attempt. Ben Macer says he saw the suspect rooftop jumping and he alerted a police officer. But he says from his vantage point, not enough was done before the man positions himself to take a shot at Trump.
Saw the person, went back and told the officer again that if he goes back to that particular spot, he can see the person, figuring that he would go in radio. And when I turned around to go back to where I was is when the gunshots started, and then it was just chaos.
Another witness told the BBC he was yelling and waving to law enforcement while pointing at the suspect on the rooftop. He was in disbelief that Trump wasn't pulled from the stage immediately. Multiple federal agencies are investigating the security posture surrounding Trump's rally. Leaders from around the world are condemning the assassination attempt against former President. Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau says he's sickened by the shooting and that political violence is never acceptable. Chinese President Xi Jinping has extended his sympathies to Trump. French President Emmanuel Macron calls it a drama for our democracies. India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi says violence has no place in politics and democracies. And UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer says political violence in any form has no place in our societies. Well, here at home, South Carolina lawmakers are reacting to yesterday's assassination attempt and deadly shooting at the former president's rally. When I talked to Congressman Russell Fry earlier today, he told me he reached out to the former president last night, letting him know that he was praying for him. Fry says yesterday's events have stirred up a lot of emotions across America.
There's a whole range of emotions that I'm feeling and that really all Americans are feeling, right? On one hand, you're incredibly sad for the victims, for the president. You're angry at how this was allowed to happen, the motives of this particular shooter, the vitriol that you see on social media. I think you're concerned and have a lot of questions about protocols that were followed or not followed, staffing that was not obviously there at the site. And so a lot of questions are in Americans' heads right now about the direction of our country.
Fry added the two committees which he is a part of, the House Oversight and the House Judiciary Committee, have already launched separate investigation into yesterday's assassination attempt. And he says he wants answers to questions like, was enough protection in place? Were people properly stationed? And were protocols followed? Because there's no place for this kind of political violence in America.
No president should be a target, and no president should, even former presidents, should have somebody get this close that means to do them harm. It's reprehensible that this happens in our country, and we need to do better.
Bryce says he's flying out for the GOP convention tomorrow and expects there will be a lot of passion throughout the event. Over in the PD, community members there in shock following yesterday's assassination attempt of former President Donald Trump. ABC 15's Shania Butler spoke with people who were stunned about what transpired in Pennsylvania.
Trump was speaking for about 5 minutes Saturday when a bullet grazed his ear, and other shots hit spectators, killing one. The incident left citizens like Mark Williams with heavy emotions.
I just think it's a a horrible thing to happen in this country to anybody, whether it be a Democrat or Republican or anybody. And it's just horrible.
One community member who wishes to remain anonymous is wishing Trump a speedy recovery and praying for the unity of our country.
It was a sad situation. I don't agree with what happened there. I pray that everyone else is okay and pray that he gets better and continue on what he's doing, But I don't condone on it. I hate it happened to him.
As investigators look into a motive, Williams says he thinks the Secret Service could have done a better job keeping folks safe.
Again, I think that the Secret Service really let both parties down when you look at it, because they didn't do their job, and they really didn't clear the area.
Many people today echoing what President Joe Biden said, that there's no place in America for this type of violence. In Florence, Shania Butler, ABC 15 News.
She also spoke with the Florence County Republican Party Chair Mike Page. Here's what he had to say.
Tragic that someone is trying to solve political differences with violence.
Tonight, there are calls for calm following the attempted assassination of former President Donald Trump at a Pennsylvania rally Saturday. The FBI has taken over the investigation as questions mount about how this could have even happened in the first place. Here's national correspondent Christine Frizzau with more.
An incident not seen in a generation. Now the start of a new chapter of modern history. The assassination attempt of the former president and current presumptive presidential nominee, leaving a nation stunned. New video from TMZ showing the suspected shooter, 20-year-old Thomas Matthew Crooks, in the moments before he was killed by Secret Service. The AP reporting a local police officer tried to confront the shooter, but backed away when the gun was pointed at him. The suspect's yearbook photos seen here. The crime now being investigated by the FBI as a domestic terror attack.
That bullet went just apparently a millimeter from doing real and permanent damage to him, or perhaps taking his life.
Speaker of the House Mike Johnson promising a full investigation into how Donald Trump was left so vulnerable, following witness accounts like this.
We noticed a guy crawling, bear crawling up the roof. We're pointing at the guy crawling up the roof.
And he had a gun, right?
He had a rifle. We could clearly see him with a rifle. Absolutely.
Police say he had explosives in his car and at his home, and was just about 200 to 300 yards away from the stage where Donald Trump was speaking.
How is it that someone could get on a roof with a superior position with a weapon and attempt to assassinate former President Donald Trump? It's just unthinkable, unfathomable. We need to know, is this a protocol failure? Is this a resources issue?
A defiant Donald Trump arriving in Milwaukee for the Republican National Convention, saying he decided not to delay his trip, posting, "I cannot allow a shooter or potential assassin to force change to scheduling or anything else." President Joe Biden from the Oval Office addressing the nation Sunday night.
A former president was shot, an American citizen killed, while simply exercising his freedom to support the candidate of his choosing. We must not go down this road in America.
A former Pennsylvania fire chief, Corey Comparator, was killed while attending the Butler County rally. His sister posting this photo on Facebook saying, "My baby brother had just turned 50. Former First Lady Melania Trump posting this statement on X, calling the country to ascend above the hate, the vitriol, and the simple-minded ideas that ignite violence. President Joe Biden is echoing those calls for unity, as are many of his fellow Democrats, saying it's time to stop calling for him to step down out of concern for his debate performance or his poll numbers, and instead stand behind him during this difficult time for our country. I'm Christine Frizzau reporting.
Leaders around the world are condemning the assassination attempt against former President Trump. Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau says he's sickened by the shooting and that political violence is never acceptable. Chinese President Xi Jinping has extended his sympathies to Trump. French President Emmanuel Macron calls it a drama for our democracies. India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi says violence has no place in politics and democracies. And UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer says political violence in any form has no place in our societies. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu on Sunday is condemning the attack against former President Donald Trump.
This wasn't just an attack on Donald Trump. This was an attack on a candidate for the presidency of the United States. This was an attack on America. It was an attack on democracy. It was an attack on all the democracies.
He also went on to offer his thoughts and prayers towards the former president and his family.
This isn't some third world banana republic. This is the United States of America. We can be better. We are better than that, and we should act like it.
From local Congressman Russell Fry. I spoke with him earlier this afternoon about the assassination attempt on former President Donald Trump. Today he told me he reached out to the former president last night, letting him know that he was praying for him. Fry says yesterday's events have stirred up a lot of emotions across America.
There's a whole range of emotions that I'm feeling and that really all Americans are feeling, right? On one hand, you're incredibly sad for the victims, for the president. You're angry at how this was allowed to happen, the motives of this particular shooter, the vitriol that you see on social media. I think you're concerned and have a lot of questions about protocols that were followed or not followed, staffing that was not obviously there at the site. And so a lot of questions are in Americans' heads right now about the direction of our country.
Fry added the two committees which he is a part of, the House Oversight and the House Judiciary Committee, have already launched separate investigations into yesterday's assassination attempt. And he says he wants answers to questions like, was enough protection in place? Were people properly stationed? And were protocols followed? Because there's no place for this kind of political violence in America.
No president should be a target, and no president should, even former presidents, should have somebody get this close that means to do them harm. It's reprehensible that this happens in our country, and we need to do better.
Fry says he's flying out for the GOP convention tomorrow and expects there'll be a lot of passion throughout the event. Over in the PD, community members there stunned by yesterday's assassination attempt on the former president. One community member who wishes to remain anonymous is wishing Trump a speedy recovery and praying for the unity of our country.
The stage is set for a busy week despite the assassination attempt of a former president over the weekend. Speeches start this afternoon for the Republican National Convention.
Trump's plane landed in Milwaukee last night. His campaign is planning to highlight his plan for the economy and call on the nation for unity. This as Trump told the New York Post last night he's, quote, supposed to be dead. The Secret Service says it is fully prepared for the RNC and that there will be no anticipated changes to its security plans.
So we are confident in these security plans that are in place for this event, and we're ready to go. It's been an 18-month process. We've worked together over that 18 months to develop operational security plans for any and all aspects of security related to this event.
Milwaukee police say at least 24 states and the District of Columbia are sending officers to the convention. Officials say additional departments could be added to the list up until the convention start. National correspondent Atra El-Nashar reports from Milwaukee.
The Republican National Convention carrying on after an attempt on former President Trump's life. Trump flying from his Bedminster, New Jersey golf club to Milwaukee Sunday afternoon.
I think people are excited about it. I hope it's going to help a bigger turnout for the Republicans, hopefully.
After Saturday's events, the RNC security perimeter will not be expanded, and civilians will still be allowed to carry firearms outside the perimeter.
Our state law allows for the particular right to carry a firearm. We as a city cannot legislate out of that.
Downtown Milwaukee blanketed with law enforcement, especially surrounding Pfizer Forum, where delegates will gather, and the Pfister Hotel, where Trump is staying. But this time feels far from routine. From volunteers to sitting members of Congress, here in Milwaukee, it seems all anyone is talking about is the shock of an assassination attempt on the man they're about to formally nominate as their presidential candidate.
I'm literally beyond words at what has happened there.
I got a phone call from my brother, and I couldn't believe it. And he said, no, it really happened.
President Biden ordering an independent review of what happened at the Pennsylvania rally and how, and for the findings to be made public. And
I've directed the head of the Secret Service to review all security measures for the Republican National Convention.
An estimated 50,000 delegates, media, law enforcement, and visitors are expected. Even before the Trump rally shooting, the Department of Homeland Security designated the RNC as a Tier 1 event with national and/or international importance that requires extensive federal interagency support. Local and state police aiding federal law enforcement ranging from Secret Service to the Coast Guard and Customs and Border Patrol, monitoring the skies and nearby Lake Michigan, Milwaukee, and Menominee rivers.
Very confident in the security situation here in Milwaukee. This is probably one of the most secure areas on the planet.
Capitol Police is also here to protect sitting members of Congress attending the convention, a necessity. Last year alone, Capitol Police's threat assessment team handled more than 8,000 cases.
Wisconsin GOP Chair Brian Schimming says despite the shooting, the convention schedule will go on as planned. That includes the vice presidential nomination on Wednesday and the presidential nomination on Thursday. In Milwaukee, I'm Atrell Nashar.
Authorities are piecing together a profile of the man suspected of taking aim at Trump. The suspect's been identified as 20-year-old Thomas Crooks. A source says the suspect is believed to be a lone wolf with no ties to extremist organizations. Crooks is from Bethel Park, Pennsylvania, and was a registered Republican. He would have been eligible to vote for the first time this year. He also had no known history of mental health conditions. Former classmates tell investigators he was constantly bullied.
Trump's campaign started a GoFundMe to raise money for the victims shot. As of this morning, it's raised more than $3.5 million. Trump's allies and supporters are sharing the link online, including Ohio Senator J.D. Vance. Vance is a leading contender to be Trump's vice presidential pick.
And reaction is pouring in from lawmakers across the country, including one here in South Carolina.
This is what Congressman Russell Fry had to say.
This isn't some third world banana republic. This is the United States of America. We can be better. We are better than that. And we should act like it.
Now, Fry spoke with ABC 15 over the weekend and told us he reached out to the former president Saturday night, letting him know that he was praying for him. He says Saturday's events have stirred up a lot of emotions across America.
There's a whole range of emotions that I'm feeling and that really all Americans are feeling, right? On one hand, you're incredibly sad for the victims, for the president. You're angry at how this was allowed to happen, the motives of this particular shooter, the vitriol that you see on social media. I think you're concerned and have a lot of questions about protocols that were followed or not followed, staffing that was not obviously there at the site. And so a lot of questions are in Americans' heads right now about the direction of our country.
Fry added the two committees, which he is a part of, the House Oversight and the House Judiciary, have already launched separate investigations. He says he wants answers to questions like if there were enough protections in place, if people were properly stationed, and if protocols were followed, because there's no place for this kind of political violence in America.
South Carolina Senator Lindsey Graham also weighed in a post on X. The Republican said, quote, "Thank God President Trump seems to be okay." He went on to say this is just another reminder of the times in which we live. Graham went on to say we need to pray for anyone who may have been injured in the rally. Senator Tim Scott also shared his prayers, saying he's praying for Trump and everyone at the rally in Pennsylvania. In another post on X, Scott went on to say, quote, "We are the United States of America. We don't cower to threats." He says the country, quote, "stands strong and defiant like President Trump did."
The governor with a similar message, McMaster said, quote, "The risk and force of President Trump is willing to face to serve his country are unbounded." The governor went on to say he is the face of America's strength today. He says Peggy and himself join the millions of others praying for his safety and security.
You can read more of these reactions by looking for the article "SC Politicians React to Shots Fired at Trump Rally." It's located on our homepage. There you'll find a number of other articles with all of our coverage from Saturday's shooting.